All right, for Algebra 2, we're looking at reviewing for our Chapter 1 test. Our test is going to be on Monday. The first section of problems, each of the functions need to be graphed with their parents and then describe their transformation. I have my graphs in front of me, and I already have, I'm actually going to cover this up. I already have the parent functions drawn on. I have put together a little table for these in order to graph the new function. This is y equals x is our parent. Make sure that it's labeled on your graph. X plus 3 is our new function, and when I go and I have a table of values here, negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 2, negative 4 goes down to negative 1, and I start to notice that what's going on with this parent function is that it's just being slid up 3 spaces because of the positive 3. So I'm gonna label it my new function here, and if you have to use yellow or something to highlight what's what on your paper, do so. And then I have to do a description of this. The plus 3 gave me a vertical translation of the parent up 3. Translation of y equals x up 3. The description is important. Make sure that it's either on your graph or it's on your document. When I looked at making a table for number 2, I looked at it and said, you know what, this negative 1, all it does is drop this entire function down 1. It's a vertical translation down 1. So again, just double checking that you have things labeled up. My parent is already there. Kind of gets a little bit tight here, so I want to make sure that I label it nice. And then my description of what's going on in vertical translation. Ooh, I wish that looked more parallel, but that's okay. Vertical translation of y equals the absolute value of x down 1. Again, the description needs to be there. Moving on to number 3, I have my, this is a quadratic. I have my quadratic parent already on my graph. I think if I remember right, this half is going to make this a wider parabola. Let me go plot the points that I had. If you didn't have this on your paper, you're welcome to take the table of values I made. And again, I just went into the calculator for that. Negative 4 and then up to 8. Negative 2 up to 2. Its vertex is at 0, 0. Once I have that left side, it makes it a little bit easier to tell the symmetry in the right. Now we would call this a vertical shrink of the parent because it shrinks away from the y-axis. This is a vertical shrink of y equals x squared by a factor of half. Make sure that you're using all that, including the factor of a half. Number 4, this is our constant function y equals 1 that I'm comparing to. And this is h of x equals 4. And so this guy is just a vertical translation of the parent up 3. Vertical translation of the parent of y equals 1 up 3. Descriptions are significant. Moving on. Number 5, I've got my parent function absolute value of x. This one reflects and I believe moves down if I remember right from looking at it on the graph. I'm going to go negative 3 down to negative 6, negative 2 to negative 5, negative 1 to negative 4, 0, negative 3. Yeah, and it starts going back down the same way. So with this, I've got 2 things to talk about once I draw it on. Making sure that I'm addressing this is a reflection of y equals the absolute value of x over the x-axis. That's because of the negative. And a vertical translation down 2. And a vertical translation down, oh, I'm sorry, down 3. Translation down 3. Looked, just from my observations in class, graphing looks like it's going well. It's check in with your descriptions. Are you getting everything on the page to describe what's happening? I got my parent on here for number 6. I don't see my, there's my table of values. -4, -3, -3, 0, -2, -3. Okay, so this one, let me just get the function up here. I don't know why I didn't write it. This is -3 times the quantity x plus 3 squared. All right, there we go. Now, this has got a couple things going on. This -3, well, the negative sign out front. Okay, so this parent did a bunch of stuff. The negative sign made it flip over. The 3 made it skinnier. And the +3 inside moved it to the left. And I have to talk about the negative, the 3 here. So this is my A value, and the 3 inside. So I had a reflection of y equals x squared over the x-axis. That brought it down to like this. Then it actually got skinnier. And getting skinnier is going to be a vertical stretch. It goes towards the y-axis, a vertical stretch of a factor of 3. I've already addressed the negative. That's this 3. The negative made the reflection. And then this +3 gave me a horizontal translation 3 units left. Remember, it does the opposite of what we think. Horizontal translation 3 units left. Again, make sure your descriptions are complete. If you need to add a piece of paper to your assignment or something to write these out, go ahead. Now, next part of this, we go on to 7, 8, and 9. In these problems, I got to go get my notes out. You're gonna have your notes in order to do this. For number 7, I'm gonna kind of write these right over here. I'm starting out with f of x equals the absolute value of x. Now, I have a reflection in the x-axis. When I go into my notes, reflection in the x-axis, what I have to do is take the opposite of everything in the function. Reflection in the x-axis means that I have to take everything and multiply it by -1, the whole entire function. So my g of x is going to be opposite of absolute value of x. That'll turn this over the x-axis. And then this vertical translation, horizontal translation 4 units to the left is going that way, but from what we've experienced, and we just saw this with another one, that means I got to go take my x inside and add 4 to it. So, believing that this is what's going on, I want to just remind you how you can go and check these. It says check your answer in your calculator. Our y equals, let's go put that parent in there, math, number, get my absolute value of x. Then in 2, so I'm starting out with just, this is my beginning, where I started. And then let's go and take a look at where we finished. The opposite of the absolute value of x, that +4 should be moving it left, that negative should be flipping it over. There's the parent, there's the flip and left, reflection over the x-axis, followed by a translation 4 units left. So my number 7, I've got g of x equals the opposite of the absolute value of the quantity x plus 4. Now with number 8, let's see here, we're starting out in 8, f of x, again, same parent, absolute value of x. This is our beginning. And as I read this, it's a vertical shrink by a factor of 1/2. So that first step is going to take me to g of x, a vertical shrink by a factor of 1/2. A vertical shrink lands outside the function. It should actually, if it's a vertical shrink, it should make it wider. So there's my vertical shrink by a factor of 1/2. Now in addition to that, I have to do a translation 2 units up. That's a vertical translation, and that, when we do a vertical translation, it stays outside the parentheses, or I'm sorry, it stays outside our absolute value quantity. This +2 out here should move it up. So let me go back into my y equals. I'm just going to change out my second equation. My second equation, my f of x is in there. Let me put this fraction in parentheses, 1/2 of, I need my absolute value, 1/2 of the absolute value of x. That's the only thing I want in the absolute value fences. And then I want my +2 outside. And I can go look. There's the parent, vertical shrink. There you go, vertical shrink, it got wider. It moved away from the y-axis and it translated 2 units up. So what we had was correct. All right, last but not least, I am starting with a linear transformation. So number 9, my beginning is f of x equals x. And a translation 3 units down from what we were just messing around with, that means that it's got to be x minus 3. Nothing in parentheses here. And then it says followed by a reflection in the y-axis. Now, from what we have reflection in the y-axis, I go back to my notes. All we do is make the x opposite. All we do is make the x opposite. So to finish that up, my next step would be just to take that opposite of x and then minus 3. And then let's go into our calculator and see if what we expected to happen did. Different parent, y equals x in there. Now I'm going to compare it to negative x minus 3. Let's take a look at that graph. There's y equals x. So let's see, translation 2 units down and then a reflection. I actually want to put this middle one in here. I'm going to just do this. Let me delete. That should have translated it 3 units down. There it goes. Translated 3 units down. Now when I went and did my last step, I made that x negative. Let's see what happens. You got it. So there's my translation down, but then reflected over the y-axis. Got me to this place. So my middle product I can get out. Get that guy out of there. There, moves down 3, and then flips over y. All set on those, and again, you'll be able to use your notes.